somewhere. Breathe in some love. Let yourself unfold. Breathe in some love.
You saw me? I tried to sneak that in. It didn't work. Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Nikki. Welcome back to Dr. Nikki Knows. I've switched things up. Um, I am here now on Thursdays for the live stream. Wednesdays felt really rushed and congested. It's like I had all of this stuff come across my social calendar at one time for like Wednesdays. And I was like, so Wednesdays is the night that everybody is doing stuff. Let me switch it up. So I'm hoping that going live on Thursdays, same time, 7 p.m. CDT, is closer to the weekend. You only got to go to work on Friday, one more day. I'm hoping that this allows people to join me more for the lives because I love having people in the room here, in the space, watching it and engaging and commenting. So, if you are new here, thank you so much for joining me. I'm Dr. Nikki Knows. This is my YouTube channel where we talk about all things related to Black women, pleasure, and liberation. We like to center authenticity, self compassion, intimacy, joy in all that we talk about here. And I am a licensed psychologist. I work with high achieving Black women, femmes, and couples around relational and sexual wellness, but I am not your therapist. So if there's ever anything here that resonates with you, please take it back to your own mental health professional coach. If you're looking for a mental health professional, book a consultation with me, but know that this is not medical advice or psychological services. All right. Take what resonates, leave the rest. So I am super excited to get into tonight's content. I wasn't here last week. Again, I had stuff come on my social calendar. I am blessed enough to have 4 people in my life who all have birthdays on August 6th. So last week just didn't happen, which was also a good buffer for me to transition into doing the show on Thursday evening. It's gave me a little free time to sort of sit and think about that. So I know that you have been waiting for August because August is anal August. I'm so excited to get into this topic. I hope there are no YouTube censors. Part of my reason for even investing so much here in this YouTube space is running into a lot of censors and shadow banning on some of the other popular social media platforms. And that limits the open, informed conversation and education I get to have with my audience. And so I'm so excited to be able to say anal August and to be able to have this conversation. So today's episode is actually going to be one of 2 episodes where we want to focus on all things related to anal play. In specific, anal August is this sort of it's one of those made up educational events like holiday calendar. It is believed that a erotic store, sex toy store in San Francisco called Good Vibrations was the first to like use the phrase anal August, probably for marketing, and it just sort of took off from there. So this was in the 2000s, and it just sort of took off from there. And I think social media, with the it being a space where there are lots of sex workers, sex professionals, sexuality educators, sexuality coaches, clinicians, etc. The hashtag sort of like took a life of its own. So I think it's great that we have a month dedicated to a specific emphasis around this type of sexual behavior, this type of sexual play, because I think it is one of the top types of sexual behaviors that is really um, mystified and has a lot of myths surrounding it, and actually, really, I think, demonized. So, today's episode is just about those myths, right? I want to work to spend a little time today talking about how to like naming some of the top myths that I hear and then giving some real education and information about those things. And then next week, we can talk more about sort of the ins and outs, if you will. You see what I did there? um, Tips and tricks. And a little bit more education into the how to's. Okay, so we're going to sort of break it down across those two episodes today. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, please drop them in the chat. I want this to be fun, but I really want it to be informative, right? So we talk about this month of anal August as a way to highlight and give some special time dedicated to this particular type of erotic sexual play. I think that the reason why I'm excited to talk about it here in this space, again, this space is around Black women's pleasure and liberation. And so when I talk about pleasure, I'm always advocating for us to have the most expansive, nuanced, um, limitless access to pleasure that feels good, authentic, aligned, and safe for us, right? And so, in my thinking about being sex positive in the work that I do in wanting to create a liberated sex positive world, that doesn't mean that I'm advocating for anal play for everybody. What I'm saying is, I want everybody to feel empowered to make a decision about what they're curious about, what they want to try, what they want to incorporate, what they don't want to incorporate in their sexual repertoire, in their sexual relationships, based on their own aligned sense of pleasure and joy. And in particular, Black women experience a lot of internalized limitations, shame, judgment, vilification about themselves as sexual beings. And in particular, when we talk about the experience around anal play, there is a huge intersection between those internalized experiences, sort of from a gendered cultural lens, but also because that type of play has been very much stigmatized, demonized because of its association with gay men, right? So it's really important that we acknowledge that there are these systems of power and oppression that are active components in the most intimate parts of our lives, right? And that is why I am constantly linking these pieces of pleasure and liberation together. And so, what I want to do is just name the fact that a lot of the myths that exist about anal play really are rooted in homophobia, and they are also rooted uh, in patriarchy, and specifically the denigration of things associated with women or femininity. Right? We can unpack that a little bit more and go back to previous episodes where we've talked about there being this overemphasis on penetrative sex as what is sex, right? This um, over uh, emphasis, reliance, interest on limitation to sex being intercourse, right? And then from a heterosexist perspective, the male is the dominant person, the person with the penis, and the woman is who receives is submissive, right? And so then if we extend that thinking to same sex um, pairs and intercourse, then we see this intersection of homophobia and denigration of gay men because they are receiving, right? So there's a lot of like layers here connected to sexism, gender, and race. And so what I want to do is take all of that shit off the table constantly and always and give you the freedom and sense of empowerment to be able to question Do I not want to do this thing because I personally don't want to do this thing? Or do I not want to do this thing because I've been told that it's wrong and bad and I shouldn't do it and I just never really thought about it and questioned it, right? And if the answer is the second one, then I do want you to spend a little time questioning that. I want you to at least be curious about it so that you can get the clear answer about whether actually that was a bunch of bullshit and I do like it, or actually I see why my thinking about it was wrong, but it's also not for me, right? I want you to come to a place of authentically being able to choose what you want for yourself as a sexual being, up into and including anal play. Okay. So, what are some of the myths that you have heard, that or things maybe you don't even know that they're myths, but what are some of the maybe stereotypes or common things that you have heard or you think about that comes up for you when we start talking about anal play? And I also hope you're noticing that I'm saying anal play and not anal sex, because we want to also be as inclusive as possible and to recognize that you can experience lots of sexual acts that involve the anus that do not involve penetration or sex. Okay. So we're talking about the whole umbrella of sexual play. What are some of the misconceptions, myths, stereotypes, or things that you've heard about that? If you feel confident and bold enough, drop those in the chat for me. And we'll see how many of the ones that you put in there come up for me. There are five that I want to talk about today. And the first one is it's nasty, it's unhygienic, right? That it's the place where you poop. There's clearly going to be poop involved. Why would you want to have poop involved with your sexual play, right? Um, I shouldn't do that. I'm being disrespectful and like being sarcastic and snarky as I talk about the things that people say. I know that these are real beliefs that people have and real thoughts that people have. And I want to talk a little bit more today. I want to be serious and not be denigrating. So I apologize for that. So, with regard to the hygiene aspect of anal play, right? Well, one, we should be having proper hygiene for our entire body, for ourselves, for our own well being, for our own sense of care and love for our bodies, for our own health as well, right? And that includes knowing how to wipe your butt. The reality is, unfortunately, TikTok has let me know there's a lot of people out there in the world that really don't know how to wash their butts. And so, one, I want to encourage everybody to learn and to attend to their own hygiene, regardless of whether anybody else is back there or not. You're back there, it's yours. So, we want our whole body clean. So, if you are with a partner and they have good hygiene, the likelihood that you will encounter poop in the process of anal play is probably pretty low. Okay. Doesn't mean it's completely impossible. Does it happen? Yes. Can there be accidents? Yes. So I'm not going to gaslight you and be like, the anus has nothing to do with poop. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, I think people very much misunderstand how the anatomy of the anus, and also there are people who have some work to do in their hygiene around their buttholes. Okay. So we'll talk next week when we get more into the ins and outs. I just love that pun for myself. When we talk more about tips and tricks next week, I could talk more about sort of the anatomy and why that's a low likelihood. But just knowing that cleaning your body, like, so using proper wiping techniques every time you go poop, and then cleaning your body when you are having intercourse or you're going to be having any type of sexual play with somebody, even a little fresh up, little soap and water in the sink, like that's perfectly fine. If that's an area that you are feeling insecure about, attending to your hygiene and being vigilant about that is really a way to demonstrate your care for and respect for yourself, as well as care and respect for your partner. But to assume that the act of anal play in and of itself is one that is inherently unhygienic is a myth that I want to eradicate. Okay. So um, when you're properly clean, when you have regular hygienic processes that you're used to, it's an intimate act just like anything else, right? Um, for vulva owners, there can be times where you get your period without knowing that it's coming, and you can have bleeding when you are engaging in intercourse that wasn't planned, and sometimes that can feel for people unhygienic. Um, there it happens. Sometimes there's a little pee that happens when you're having penetrative sex vaginally, right? So to sort of specifically vilify and demonize anal sex because of that, I think is not fair and a bit of an excuse, a reason to sort of pile on to it being a problematic or like just wrong or bad sexual practice. Which brings me to myth number two, that it's perverted, that it's immoral, right? This is one of the myths that is most closely associated with or tied to that homophobia and heterosexism that I discussed earlier, right? In fact, there were in not only in the United States, but even in Europe, there were laws in place against the act of sodomy, which was a reference to anal sex or anal penetration, right? And in particular, those moral and religious codes that were then codified into laws really came out of a religious homophobic sentiment, right? To use as a way to criminalize same sex relationships, in particular, criminalize gay men as a way to enforce religious or moralistic standards and expectations around homophobia. I'm sorry, around homosexual relationships, right? That's where that comes from. There's nothing more to it than that, right? Um, as much as you have the ability to experience multiple erogenous zones across your body, and as much as you have different ways to bring about sensation, touch, um, play with your body and another person's body in sexual interactions and sexual behaviors, why would we limit ourselves to certain body parts just because, right? We don't think about not putting things in our mouths. I mean, I know that's a thing. I know that's a thing that people don't engage in oral sex. I do know that. But the likelihood that people would say that that you should never engage in oral sex for either set of genitalia, right? Because it's perverted or wrong, doesn't exist, right? We've evolved beyond that in this culture. And so the fact that we still sort of say that related to anal play is because of its deep roots and associations with homophobia. And that is really rooted out of, again, religious and sort of imposed moral codes, right? And so what I want to say is pleasure is personal. And uh, uh, as personal as it is, again, you get to decide what's for you and what do you like and what you don't like. And there's no moralistic component around that. I think that there are only two hard, fast rules that we should all live by with regard to morals and sex, and that is whether a person can or cannot consent, right? So a person who cannot consent, and that is inclusive of children, people who have intellectual disabilities, people who are not conscious, people who have not given or actively revoked their consent. So, in the context of rape or sexual assault, right? Or necrophilia, like because they also can consent, right? To objectify a dead body and defile a dead body. Outside of those two things, why would we spend our energy and time thinking about other people's sex lives and then saying that it's bad or wrong? in this economy, in this world, where there's multiple genocides happening, where there's authoritarian governments, where people's rights are being revoked, where in the state of Texas they're intentionally, illegally gerrymandering precincts so that voter rights can be suppressed. Like, we have so many bigger fish to fry in a world where there are multiple multi-billionaires and people that are starving and homeless, that you would take the time to worry about someone else's sexual choices, to me tells me you don't have enough time to educate yourself about all the other things that are happening in the world, right? So let's move away from thinking about anal play as being perverted or immoral, right? That it's just some freaky stuff that only weird people do, right? Any sort of those myths, that sort of language, let's let that go, okay? Because it's rooted in nothing, right? But a source of control that is outdated and ancient, right? Again, pleasure is personal, and all pathways to pleasure, as long as you are with a consenting adult or engaging in a way that is not causing harm to yourself, all pleasure is valid. Okay. And so, as long as you are engaging in consensual anal play, um, and that even if it's not, even if it's new, um, a new type of sexual play that you want to introduce into your relationship, there's a process along curiosity, having the discussion, talking about it, getting more information, right? And so we don't have to automatically shut something down because we have some stereotypes about it, right? That's what I'm trying to reinforce. Okay. So number one, we've talked about the myth that it's unhygienic. Number two, we've talked about anal play being perverted or immoral. And three, let's get into it. That is always painful. I had a guy that told me one time, like, he was like, like, I just don't understand gay dudes. Like, essentially, you're like agreeing to be physically violated every time you have like sex with somebody. And I was like, I'm pretty sure that's very, very inaccurate, right? This would have been when I was in my 20s, when I was less informed. And I was like, I just don't feel like gay men across centuries um, and the globe are specifically a group of people that find pleasure in pain. So I'm pretty sure that's not accurate, right? So there is this I think almost widely accepted truth that is a myth, is not accurate, that anal play is always painful. Okay. Number one, again, when we talk about anal play, what I'm talking about is a range of activities, and some don't even involve penetration. So we could be talking about analingus, which is maybe referred to as rimming back in was that the 90s or the early 2000s? The term tossing your salad became popularized. That's how old I am, right? So that's what we refer to in terms of rimming or using your mouth to stimulate the anus, right? That doesn't necessarily involve penetration. It can involve penetration of the tongue, but that's not necessarily what's happening there. Or you could just use digital stimulation, right? So fingering. It doesn't necessarily have to be penetration with a phallus or a penis, right? So the range of things may not involve any discomfort whatsoever. And if you are talking about penetration with a phallic sex toy or with a penis, that it doesn't have to be painful at all. Like, there could be and likely is some discomfort. However, that should not be consistent if you are doing it with if you're doing it properly and doing it over time. You shouldn't be experiencing that every single time, and um, it shouldn't be painful the whole time, unless that's your thing. You see what I'm saying? Again, we go back to number two. We're not going to vilify or moralize anybody's sexual choices or how they find pleasure. The phrasing in the kink BDSM world is "I won't yuck your yum," right? Meaning you like it, I love it, right? It's not. It doesn't have to be something that you are into for you to be able to say they're into that and it brings them joy and pleasure, and their partner consents to that and they like it. I don't get it. It don't do nothing for me, but go for it. The same thing, right? So the process of thinking about this as a possibility and consenting over time. Remember, we want to always think about consent as an ongoing active process. It's not something that's like one and done, right? That consent can be revoked at any time. So you should have full agency and autonomy over yourself as a sexual being in your play with partners. And so if there is the experience of discomfort that does not feel good to you, of sustained discomfort that you do not like, if there is the experience of pain that is also not bringing associated with any sense of pleasure for you, then that is a conversation you need to be having, and you need to feel empowered to advocate for yourself. And I would say this for any type of sexual play: if you don't feel safe and empowered enough to advocate for yourself throughout the entire experience, then you shouldn't be having that experience with that person. You're not ready for that experience, or that person isn't a safe person for you. So that it doesn't matter whether we're talking about anal play or intercourse or oral sex or whatever, being tied up, bondage, it doesn't matter. If there's some part of it in which you feel like you can't advocate for yourself and say stop or pause or wait, give me a minute, or can we try something different, or if you feel like you can't do that, then that's behavior that you shouldn't be doing with anyone else until you're able to do that. Okay. And so discomfort or pain is not an inevitability when it comes to anal play. So even if we're talking about penetration, whether it's digital stimulation with a phallic sex toy or with a penis, and next week when we kind of get more into the details, we will talk about what is safe and not safe to put up there. That uh, it should it should be done with patience, with lots of communication, that you should be fully in your body and aroused, that you should feel relaxed, right? And there should be lots of lube and lots of love. Okay, that's happening. When you're able to have all of those elements in place, that there are a significant number of nerve endings in the anus, for everybody, regardless of your gender. Um, and for folks assigned male at birth, uh, there's a P spot, a prostate, little magic button inside the booty hole that creates a great deal of pleasure, a great deal of erotic stimulation. And for some women, there's um, the A spot, the anterior fornix, that can also be stimulated from anal penetration, that also can lead to highly pleasurable, um, very erotic orgasms for people. So the whole thing is not painful. I just really want people to think about that. That if the whole thing hurt every time, all the time, we wouldn't be doing it. Like, we wouldn't be doing it, you know? Like, human beings do things that bring them a benefit. Um, and because of the potential benefit, because of the type of physiological pleasure, because of the intimacy required to have that type of intercourse, sexual play, I think there is so much missed opportunity for extremely heightened sexual experiences for all people, and especially for Black women and femmes, by not at least being curious about anal play. Okay, so think about that. Okay, just think about it. Number 4. Okay, so we talked about anal play being unhygienic. as myth 1. Myth 2, anal play being immoral or perverted. Myth 3, that anal play is always painful. And pretty much anytime you hear the word always, never, that's usually like a pretty strong indication that let me question that a little bit, right? Um, and so myth 4, it's only for gay men. So sorry to tell you, no, not true, like at all. Everybody has a booty hole, regardless of your gender, regardless of your sex, regardless of your sexual orientation. Everybody got a booty hole, and it has lots of nerve endings that bring around a lot of erotic stimulation. And so it's not just for gay men, okay? That lots of straight men engage and enjoy receiving anal play, and lots of heterosexual couples with the woman enjoy receiving anal play, and it's an opportunity for fun for everybody without any moral judgment whatsoever, right? So, um, and for folks that have trans bodies that may be experiencing specific degrees of dysphoria with their genitalia, there's a possibility that engaging in anal play feels safer in their bodies because everybody got a booty hole, right? I just want everybody to remember that part. I kind of want that on a t-shirt. I bet there is a t-shirt that says that. If you find that t-shirt already made for me, please send me the link. I would love that, right? But no, anal play is something that is and I believe should be accessible to all bodies if it is something that you are curious about or you know that you enjoy. Um, and it's not limited to anybody whatsoever, right? I think that there are some important like generational cohort differences for that too. I think that Gen Z is much more open to pleasure without boundaries in the same way that um, even millennials or Gen X folks do. But there's also some research that shows that Gen X and Gen Z folks engage in anal play in about the same prevalence rates. I actually have this really great book. It's called "But Seriously." I'll put it in the show notes by Dr. Evan Goldstein. I think it's Steen, not Stein. The E is first. Goldstein. Um, and it's 2024, I believe. Hold on one second. Let me not lie. Yep, 2024. And the data that he cites in here is that, yeah, there we go. So some data from his practice and the folks that work on his team is they surveyed a cohort of sexually active American adults. They didn't give numbers in here, so I don't know that. It may be in the footnotes. Including so in generally about their sexual behavior, including their anal sex experiences, and they found in their sample 72% had either tried receiving anal sex, so bottoming, or topping, so penetrating or giving, and then 1 in 4 had tried both. And then when they looked across generations, they found that 70% of Gen Z has tried some form of anal sex, and 70% of Gen X and 74% of millennials, right? So people out there playing with booty holes. I just want you to know that, right? I think that sometimes what happens is because we are aware of the existing myths about something, right? Of which we've just acknowledged there's some negative connotations, right, associated with it being dirty or immoral, that people will sometimes respond in public or like social discourse about something in one way because they don't want to be seen as aberrant. They don't want to be associated with that negative thing. But behind closed doors, it's a whole different story. Okay. because people are out here doing it. It's not just for gay men, okay? If you're a person that has thought about it or is interested or curious or wondered, then go about putting it on the table, right? Go about having that conversation. Get clear with yourself first, but don't limit yourself because of what other people out there thinking, or what you think other people out there thinking, because what they saying and what they doing are two different things, is what I think. And then myth number 5, that anal is just like what we see in porn. No, absolutely not. I will remind everyone, not just for anal play, but for all things. Porn is made for entertainment. It's supposed to be a certain kind of way. I don't care how it's filmed. Okay. I don't care if it's amateur. I don't care if it's OnlyFans. It's done for performance sake, right? And you can talk to any sex worker. There's a lot of prep that goes into making things look easy and seamless, um, and uh like just look like it's just naturally happening in lots of sex acts that do not happen. And there's also a lot of editing that happens, okay? Camera angles. So experiencing something 2D through a lens is not the same thing as experiencing it in real life and in person. That's number one. And number two, porn is specifically created and designed to sell a product, to sell sex, right? It's a highly lucrative industry. And so it's branding and marketing that you're seeing. So you cannot engage in anal play, specifically penetration, like they do in porn. Okay. That would be painful. That would be uncomfortable. That probably wouldn't be fun for everybody involved, right? So you need to remember there's a fantasy and performance that's happening. And the other thing about porn is like everything goes exactly the way it plans. Like when you see the clip or the scene, right? It gives a very much beginning, middle, and end that feels like a narrative. It tells a story. And in reality, we know that sex is not that linear, that there can be times where people take breaks. There can be times where erections flag. There can be times where there's less lubrication or we need to add more lubrication. There could be interruptions with the phone, somebody knocking on the door. There could be all sorts of things that happen. And so real life is very different than porn in every aspect, but in specific, there is a um, there is a really healthy, loving, intentional, and gentle way that we need to go about preparing the body for anal penetration. And you want to do that because what you want to do is be, again, so much in your body and so aroused and in the moment with a trusted partner that you're able to experience the benefit, right? And the benefit is for the erotic connection, it's for the experience of pleasure in your body, it's for the experience of achieving orgasm. And uh, to be specific, when we talk about orgasm from anal sex, it is, or from anal play, that's a different type of embodied orgasm than you would experience for women from a vaginal orgasm or from a clitoral orgasm, from a nipple orgasm, right? That how those nerve endings are stimulated and the ways in which they create arousal and that level of erotic release climax in your body through anal stimulation is different than other parts of your body, right? And for men that are experiencing a prostate or P spot orgasm, that's a different way of climaxing and experiencing orgasm that in, in, in is experienced differently physiologically in the same way, right? Um, and sometimes even the experience of ejaculation coming through a P spot orgasm is different than what is experienced through penetrative sex or when the penis is stimulated with oral sex, right? So there, we are, it's important to know when I talk about the variability, right? Putting things on the table, expanding your pleasure repertoire, that's part of what I'm talking about, right? That you're having a qualitatively different experience because you're engaging different parts of your body and different parts of your nervous system and brain. Okay. And so, what that looks like does require a different level of intentionality and care than what we see in porn. Okay. Doesn't mean that you need to be deterred, doesn't mean that you shouldn't have your curiosity, but it does require a different level of trust and patience, I believe, and very, very much more mutual attunement between you and the partner. Whether you are the top, so the one giving, or the bottom, the one receiving. You should do that in any type of penetration, but in particular, we're talking about anal sex because of the anatomy, and because it is something that does take intentional um, preparation. That being able to be really attuned to your partner and what's going on with them physiologically, being able to read their cues, being able to create a sense of safety and comfort for their nervous system, um, to be able to maximize the pleasurable experience, and for you to be even if the penetrating partner at the top, you also want to be in a situation where you feel safe and trusted so that you can decide if you need to take a break or you need to stop or something doesn't feel good for you or you're not quite in the moment, right? That's what we mean by mutual attunement, and we want to prioritize that because that is a part of the pleasure. We want to prioritize that because that is a very important part of the pleasure that gets folded in beyond just the specific erotic release and stimulation. And so being able to have that level of comfort and safety is not like porn. Okay. It's not like TV. Okay. Um, Thoughts. What do you think? I'm very, very curious to know how you will receive this episode. I want to talk a little bit more about. Oh, before I move on, so I, I, um, I hope that helped. Right, I wanted to set the groundwork for us talking about um, different types of anal play and doing a little bit more education around that in next week's episode by first sort of clearing the way and talking about these myths, because I do think they get in the way. I think I think the mindset about anal play is really important. Just like I think the mindset that you have around pleasure and all types of other sexual play and experiences is really, really important. And this one sort of is set aside for all of those reasons that we talked about at the top. Um, um, oh, my mind just went blank. I was going to say something else. Okay. Um, if I remember it, I will make sure to discuss it next time. Oh, that bothers me. I hate when that happens, y'all. But it is what it is. I want to thank you for being here. I'll be back Thursdays. We're now on Thursdays. Thursday, still 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. Please subscribe, hit that bell. Please be a friend, tell your sisters, cousins, girlfriends, your partners, your friends, your woadies, whoever, your squad. Tell them, please. I would like to get my subscriptions up. I'm like holding at 213. I'll get to 213, then I'll lose a couple people. I guess I'm saying stuff that people find problematic, um, or they're not in alignment with it. And so I keep getting this 213 and I'll drop down to like 210, 209. I'm really trying to get to 500. Well, I'm really trying to get as big as I possibly can, if I'm going to be honest. I really love this space. I love this conversation. I love being able to bring you this content in this way. I would love to be able to build community here. I would love to be monetized here. I think that the information that I'm bringing is really important, and it's educational. I make sure that I'm informed and compassionate and thoughtful and inclusive about all the things that I bring here. And so please help me build this platform. So be a friend, tell a friend, subscribe. Make sure you tune in on Thursdays for the live stream. If you have questions for any episode or about any topic, you can feel free to DM me at Dr. Nikki Knows on Instagram or TikTok. You could always shoot me an email at Nikki at Dr. Nikki Knows. But specifically going into next week, if there are tips, tricks, tools, specific questions you have about anal play, please send them to me. I'm going to do my best to address the things that I know, but if there's certain things that you're curious about, this is a safe space to ask. I will present the question anonymously. I won't out you. This isn't about shame at all. This is about making sure we get all the best information to you so that you can have the most expansive, decadent, luscious, enjoyable, sustainable, pleasurable sex life. Okay? Thank you so much for spending your time with me. As always, pleasure is a pathway to liberation, and you should be absolutely unapologetic about that. And I will see you next week.